early on, you're a musician, drummer.
Well, it's just sort of.
Super early on, but did you ever think that was going to be it, or did you always know?
No, I was not a great drummer. I was
a terrible drummer. I know you were in a band called Capital Punishment.
Yeah.
Right. I was in a band called the Bad Clams, and I was a drummer. And then I told them, I'm out. I don't have time for this. I've got other things. And I remember thinking, good luck without me. And they replaced me with a drum machine.
Oh.
And it sounded like
Can we do that on this podcast?
and people were just like, whatever, it's better. It's keeping time correctly. But that was just that was a moment for you.
I had a friend in high school who was the band leader, and he was really talented. We're still friends, Chris Roebling. But I was not a great drummer. I really wasn't great at keeping time. What is that documentary about Ginger Baker?
Ginger Baker, yeah.
That one,
from Cream.
Yeah, there's a great documentary about him, and he's like so like hard ass in terms of like you gotta like either you have time or you don't have time.
Oh, and in that documentary, they're saying things like, "You mean great, like a great drummer, like Keith Moon from The Who," and he goes, "No. I'm talking about real drum." I mean, people are mentioning icons to him, or John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. And he's like, no, I mean a real drum. I mean, this guy who thinks of like maybe 3 people in the universe are real drummers, and everyone else is just shite. You have, had just in addition to these movies you're directing, and you had all this crazy success as an actor, and then you've sort of made a conscious decision to step back a little from that, I'd say in the last 5-7 years, and say, okay, what I really want to do is craft things, direct, produce. Was that a conscious decision?
Yeah, it was a moment that kind of hit me. I always loved directing since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So like that, and then, I was directing a lot of these movies I was in over the years, but I never had, except for Cable Guy, I'd never directed anything that I wasn't in, but I always thought of myself more as a director than an actor, really. I felt like that was more where I was, I thought I was better at that. Definitely not a live performer. For my short time on SNL, it was so nerve-wracking for me to be. It's still, anytime doing something live, it's like, I don't enjoy it. I'm happy when it's over, and if it goes well, it's great. But so directing to me was always like a comfort area, and just happy. It just made me happy. And so it was really after Zoolander 2 came out, that was like sort of the inflection point where it's like the movie, didn't do well. It was not well received, and it was this moment in time where I was like, man. Like, what am I going to do? What do I want to do next? And I had some space just to kind of like think about it. Then this project that I'd been developing kind of right when the movie came out, Escape at Dannemora, this limited series about this prison escape in New York that happened in 2015, I think. That was there, and I had the time to work on it because I wasn't doing other stuff.
Save the date. Prepare for chaos. Get ready for You're Cordially Invited, a hilarious new movie starring comedy icons Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon together on screen for the first time. I cannot believe they haven't done a movie together.
Me neither. I love them both.
Hey, listen to this. It's written and directed by Nicholas Stoller of Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Neighbors. Find out what happens when 2 weddings are accidentally booked at the same remote venue. That sounds like trouble.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Is that what you do when you hear trouble? Uh-oh. Yeah. In a laugh-out-loud battle of determination and grit, the father of the bride, played, of course, by Will Ferrell, and sister of the other bride, played by Reese Witherspoon, chaotically go head-to-head and will stop at nothing to pull off an unforgettable celebration for the ones they love. I like the premise.
That's nice. It sounds wacky.
It's time to RSVP for Ferrell versus Witherspoon in the new wedding comedy, You're Cordially Invited. I'm going to check that movie out.
I am too. I miss good comedies. I don't feel like they make them as much anymore, and I want it.
It's time to bring them back.
Mm-hmm.
Watch it now, only on Prime Video. First of all, Escape at Dannemora, I love that. And I loved, to me, it's about, you get to craft something. You get to take some time, and I know how much telling a story visually is important to you. And so you get time to, let's get this exactly the way we want it. And I always think the plus and minus of doing things that are live or done quickly is we'll grab it. It may not go our way. Sometimes when it goes well, you get the rush. When it goes badly, it's over and it's time to do another one. But if you get to really craft something, it's a very different feeling, I would guess. Over a long period of time, you get to think about, what is this going to look like? How am I going to tell this story?
Right. And which is daunting too, because it's like, all right, how do I do this? But it's also, to me, it's like sort of the most subjective thing where you just go, okay, how do I see this? How would I want to see this? I think when I just got to the idea of like, basically like, what would I want to see? Because I do love comedy and I've loved comedies growing up, but I also really love just dramatic movies.
Sure. Yeah.
So I just started thinking like, well, what would I want to see? And with Escape at Danmore, I was like, yeah, I would love to see this if it was a movie, limited series, whatever. And the vibe and the feeling, I think, for me was so much, like it was so clear. And yeah, then you just take the time and work, again, collaboratively with people who you think are really talented and you have a similar sensibility. And you have these partners, you're a cinematographer, production designer, costume designer. Dan Amora was Michael Tolkien and Brett Johnson, these two great writers. And, the truth of what happened in that story was, to me, was sort of like what I was like most interested in. Because it scared me too, because I'd never done a prison escape movie. And it was like, all right, well, I have no idea how do I do this and make it real? How do I make it feel authentic? And so I just went to the real facts and the more I learned about what actually happened and got to the real places, I just said, all right, I'm just going to go for the real thing, because that was what was fascinating to me about that story, was that how could a prison escape like this happen in 2015 that feels like something out of like Escape from Alcatraz or something?
Yeah, you don't think it's possible anymore.
Yeah, and then you realize, oh, there's like the system that's in place at this old prison. There's so many places where things can go wrong, and also the hierarchy of how it works there in terms of with the guards and the prisoners. And I mean, the dynamics in a prison, it's a huge prison too. So, it's like its own little, city or something. And so the more I talked to real people who experienced it and got the details, that was really fun for me. And then cinematically, yeah, it's fun to like figure out how to do something that, hopefully will look cool and be intriguing.
Did you ever consider being imprisoned for several years? Do you really? I mean, if you really wants to capture the story, I think you should have. If you took it seriously, I think you would have done 3 years in prison.
Years.
If you want, you know what I mean?
Not like days.
I thought you did a fantastic job, but think about what you could have done if you had been in prison.
If I'd actually experienced
Would you ever consider going to prison for 3 years?
I would like to be put in prison. Many of our listeners want me in prison right now.